So for how long have you been a social worker now?
Nthabiseng?
Shem, I'm a newbie. It's 6 years. I graduated in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, I graduated in 2014. I completed my degree in 2014, and then I started practicing in 2015. And then 2017, I went into private practice.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. But you have experience.
Thank you so much, Austin Tabi. I think we can start. We are already live on YouTube.
Okay.
So good evening to all our viewers on YouTube. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us this evening. It's really going to be a great evening, definitely worth your while. And if you believe that, we're adding value to your life, please do not forget to like and subscribe to our page, and just to share this link with your family and friends, because mental health today is so important. We're really excited today to be joined by a professional. And I'm sure a lot of you have been so curious to say, why did we choose to title our conversation today, The End of an Expectation? Well, sit still. We have a professional who's going to help us to unpack our topic this evening. And our guest is a social worker by profession who runs her own private practice, by the way. And she actually specializes in counseling that is aimed at individuals, couples, companies, and even teenagers. So she obtained her honors degree in psychology with the University of South Africa, and she's currently pursuing her master's degree in social work. And I believe that she is in her last 2 chapters, if I'm actually correct. Is that still correct, Nthabiseng?
The last one. I'm actually completing the last chapter. Yes, I'm almost done.
That is so amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us this evening. We are really excited to have you with us.
And thank you for the invite. I'm honored really to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you. I'm just going to pass it to Nthabiseng to get us started.
Now, Sister Ntabi, today we're speaking about expectations. Now, expectations can greatly influence our perceptions and behaviors. How does an unmet expectation affect our behaviors?
An unmet expectation can really affect our behavior in that we become despondent, we become hurt, we become disappointed, and unfortunately, in some of the cases, we even internalize the disappointment. You take ownership of the unmet expectation without carefully processing what led to it. And also, we don't even reflect on where we really realistic in terms of our expectations when we set them. So anyone that has got an unmet expectation, unfortunately, it hurts. It hurts, it's disappointing, and it shows in how we behave. Of course, in terms of behavior, we may cry, we may be irritable, we may shout, we may isolate ourselves. Sometimes you may even engage in self-harming behavior, from the expectation. This is when we take it too far, when from an unmet expectation, someone will start engaging in alcohol. Some people will start using drugs, and some people will use what we term retail therapy. This is now self-harming, because at the end of the day, you are the one that will be left with debts to pay, or money that was spent unnecessarily. So any response that will eventually cause you to regret at the end of the day, it's a self-harming response to the unmet expectation.
Wow. Interesting.
That is so much interesting. And again, Austin Tabi, we often create expectations that match our thoughts and emotions. We create an ideal picture or an ending. How can we effectively deal with crushed expectations?
It's not an easy one, right? For us to deal with crushed expectations, because the minute one has an expectation, there is that feeling of excitement. There is that feeling of looking forward to the expectation being met. And unfortunately, you even have an ideal ending, what should happen or what's going to happen when the expectation has been met. So once you find that it hasn't been met, to deal with it, firstly, let's reflect. Was I realistic in my expectations? And number two, was the person really capable? Because sometimes we expect without even assessing if the person is capable of meeting our expectations. Sometimes we expect without even assessing if the environment itself will meet our expectations. And also, even us, assess yourself. Where are you able to, do you have enough resources, whether internally or externally, to meet that expectation yourself? So taking time to reflect and assess would really help. Was the expectation realistic? Was it really attainable? Did I expect too much? Or did I expect too much of me? Did I expect too much of the other person? So reflection is the best way, but more than anything, allow yourself to work through the pain and the hurt and the disappointment that comes with the unmet expectation. Give yourself permission to feel that pain. Give yourself permission to work through that hurt so that you are able to heal and move past it. Denial is never a good way to cope. We can never change what we deny exists. So acknowledging the existence of pain, that I've been hurt, I've created high expectations for myself, or I've created high expectation without even getting to understand the person. Acknowledge you're wrong if your judgment with the next person was wrong, or if your judgment with the circumstances were wrong, and work through your pain and allow yourself to heal so that you can move past the disappointment and the hurt.
I like that you mentioned judgment, because many of us, especially when it comes to relationships and friendships, many of us are terrified to let people down. And we always want to be seen as these strong individuals. We never want to expose our weaknesses and our fears. And most importantly, we don't want people to be let down by the expectations that they hold for us. And therefore, we always want to be everything that people expect us to be. How can we resist this urge or this shell that we have created, that we always have to be pleasing to other people? How can we break off from that shell?
There is nothing that is most painful than self-betrayal. Wanting to fit into the expectations of others is the highest form of betrayal, because then it means you have to go against everything that is you so that you can satisfy everything that they think you are. So wanting to meet the expectations of others means you have to put on a mask and not be yourself. So in order to make sure that we don't fall trap to that, never betray yourself. And it's simple. Set boundaries. Have emotional boundaries. Never take more than what you can carry emotionally. Have financial boundaries. Have physical boundaries. Have psychological boundaries. Know when to say no. And let your no be a no, and understand that you can be a nice person and still use the word no. And if you are ever put in a position where you have to choose between yourself and the next person, May God help you that you always choose yourself, because choosing the other person over yourself is lack of boundaries and betrayal to you. Because when you and that person separate and you depart, that person is happy and you are sad. And whose fault is it that you are sad? It's yours. So to make sure that you don't fall trap of the expectations of others, set boundaries. Boundaries are like a fence that says, you don't cross here and I don't cross here as well to your side. Let's have boundaries. Let's have boundaries. Let's not be boundaryless. And also remember that when we set boundaries, it is only people that are benefiting from our lack of boundaries that will be upset with us when we set those boundaries.
True.
And that means you need to reflect on that relationship. Is this relationship the kind of relationship that I'd like to keep, whereby my boundaries are disrespected? And it's not their fault as well to implement your boundaries. Your boundaries are yours to set and see through. It's not my duty to implement your boundaries. It's your duty to ensure that your boundaries are set and are respected. That responsibility lies on you. So you can't blame me for not respecting your boundaries. You need to take charge to ensure that you enforce your boundaries. Because remember, boundaries are individual and they are not the same. So what you may perceive as a boundary, I may not perceive it as a boundary. So we cannot have that argument. If it's a boundary to you, it's yours. Set it, enforce it, finish and clear.
Wow. Now, you've just raised a very interesting point on setting boundaries. Honestly, I'm actually one of those people that have been struggling with setting some boundaries in places and areas where I should have in my life. But how does one really deal with the sense of guilt that sometimes comes with setting boundaries?
You know, the sense of guilt that comes with setting boundaries comes because we were actually taught that setting boundaries is a bad thing. You know, so that is why. And also we take responsibility for the reaction of others when we set our boundaries. If you come to me and say, Nthabiseng, can you please borrow me your car? And I say no, and you feel bad, I take responsibility for your feelings. We can't. Unfortunately, I cannot be responsible for how you feel, because if I have to set my boundaries and still consider your feelings, I'm not saying we should be selfish, but we need to really learn to draw the line in terms of the things that we feel responsible for. So the guilt comes with taking responsibility of things that we are really not responsible for. And also, that's why I mentioned you can use no and still be a nice person. And how we have come to glorify people without boundaries. We glorify people without boundaries. We have made having lack of boundaries to be the most beautiful thing. And it's not. We cannot continue to praise people that don't have boundaries and bash those that set boundaries, because in the end, that is what makes us feel bad. Because if I can say no, then I'm a bad person. But because she always says yes, then she's a nice person. Setting boundaries has got nothing to do with being a nice or bad person. It's just a way that you make sure that you manage your relationships, how people relate with you, and how you relate with people, and how you also protect yourself. And maybe just to add, a lot of our mental health challenges comes from the lack of boundaries, wanting to please everyone, wanting to be there for everyone, wanting to do everything for everyone. And the minute you realize that you cannot do that, you have depression, you have a mental breakdown. So we need to start teaching people that having boundaries, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a form of self-care. It's actually a form of self-love. because you love yourself enough to protect yourself from things that will expose you to self-betrayal.
Interesting. Speaking of boundaries, quite often when we are in love, it's quite difficult to let go, especially when you are in a toxic relationship. And we forgive and we hope that a person will somehow change. Yet our anticipation is quite the opposite. Now, what do you do when you realize that the thing that you wanted so badly does not bring that expected bliss or happiness? How does one cope with such an ordeal? When you were
Denial,
hoping that the circumstance, yeah.
denial will never help. Denial will never take us anywhere. When we get into a relationship, I know there's there's a saying that says, have no expectations, there won't be any disappointments.
True.
But
True.
in return, I say, why should we be in a relationship if I cannot expect anything from you? But on the other hand, you should expect things from me. You know, like let's take a romantic relationship. We say, don't expect this and that from your partner. But we also set certain standards that you need to treat your partner by. There's no fairness. So when we get into a relationship, discussing and agreeing on the expectations that we have both from one another is important. When we are in this relationship, as my sister, I expect this and this and this and this from you. As my partner, as my mother, these are my expectations from you. And when the expectations are not met, we sit down and we talk. And when we get to a point where you realize that the relationship is toxic, remember, once we put in the word toxic, it means the person is not prepared to meet you halfway, right?
True.
We are no longer talking about ordinary mistakes, because every relationship is inherent of mistakes, is inherent of some hurt here and there. But when we talk toxic, we are actually meaning now that the other person is deliberately dismissing your needs and placing themselves higher above you. We are no longer talking equality here. So you reflect and you ask yourself, should I continue to expose myself to this kind of behavior? Because in the beginning, when a person promises you something, it's fair enough, let's do this. But at some point, you need to take responsibility, because you are now the one that continues to expose yourself to their pain, to their hurt, to their disappointment. And you need to be honest with yourself and say, do I really need to keep this relationship? Do I really deserve this out of this relationship? And let's not talk about love. Because even if you love a person, we cannot be prisoners to love. So sometimes I don't want to say love yourself more. People love themselves. But I want to say, acknowledge that you love the person, but be aware of what loving them is doing to you.
Ah, that's profound. Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
I'm not going to say to people, love yourself more, walk away. No, it's fine, because no, I don't want to believe there's anyone that doesn't love themselves. We all love ourselves.
Absolutely.
And even the person that you are in a relationship with, you love them. But go beyond love. Ask yourself, what is loving this person doing to me? And that is where your answer is in terms of why you need to let go. And if you realize, if you are honest with that conversation with yourself, you are going to see that loving this person is hurting me. And you're going to take that love. You are going to take that love and live with it, because it is not appreciated and it is not reciprocated.
Wow.
Wow. I believe that it really takes one to be honest with themselves to even come to, such realizations and taking those decisions that best serve the individual. Now, disappointment can lead to self-preservation, and that propels one to become an underachiever to avoid disappointments. How does one deal with demotion?
It's got a lot to do with, remember, when things happen to us in life, they are experiences, right? And we learn from certain experiences, and our experiences create expectations for the future and all that. So a lot of the times when we feel, or when we are faced with things like demotion, we internalize it and we reflect back instead of looking at what we are dealing with right now. So if you are faced with situations where you find yourself that, okay, I'm being demoted, look at the facts. Yes, there is history, there is previous experiences that you've had, there is future expectations that you've had from whatever that was going on. But now that things are not going according to your way, reflect. We tend to internalize a lot of things.
True.
We tend to blame ourselves a lot. At some point, we need to acknowledge that people are not seeing us for what we are, so their loss, not mine. You understand? Believe in yourself. When you have to lose a relationship, reflect and see the good in you and say, it's their loss. They couldn't see how much I loved them. Instead of blaming yourself for loving them. I don't know if you understand the difference between these two approaches. A lot of time when we're dealing with disappointment, we internalize it a lot and we take ownership of the decisions of others, and we bash ourselves. Can we turn the tables and say, I love them, and now they've decided that they don't want me? It's their loss. I wish they could have seen how much I value them. I wish they could have seen how much contribution I would have made in their company. I wish they could have seen how much joy and life and light I would have brought into their life. But unfortunately, because we lack the self-identity as well, we don't take enough time in the self-identity, in building our self-concept. We want things and people to give us identification, the job to give you identity, the marriage to give you identity, the partner to give you identity. So when we lose those things, we kind of lose our identity as well. So it's about time that we learn to find our identity in our inner being, in our inner self, not in our outer part, because everything that is on the outside may shift and may change tomorrow. Does that mean your identity is going to change? Know your core, so that when people lose you, you know what they are losing, but you don't focus on what they would have brought to your life, what you think they didn't. No, know your
That is
core.
power right there.
Know your core,
absolutely.
and say, their loss, not mine. I will do better in the next job. I will do better in the next relationship, because I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. Identify yourself. Own who you are.
Amen. Wow. Now, Wandile spoke about demotion. Now, we have other people that follow a different trajectory. They avoid disappointments by becoming overachievers. They set the bar so high in order to avoid disappointment. Now, can perfectionism lead to disappointment?
I'm not sure if anyone can be perfect, right? Because we are not perfect as human beings. True. So the expectations for you to be perfect, or for you to perform perfectionism, while you by nature are an imperfect human being, is a fair one on yourself.
So,
So perfectionism is not going to avoid disappointments, but it may rather make you deal harder with disappointments, because in life you're not in charge of everything. So the minute you have the the minute you have the perfectionist mentality, you forget that there are certain things that are out of your control. The minute there are things that are out of your control, automatically it means in some of the things or in some phases of your life, disappointment is inevitable. Like when you are in a marriage, it's not just you. The behavior of your partner contributes to whether the marriage is perfect, although there are two imperfect human beings in it. So having the mentality to say, my marriage is going to be perfect, I'm going to make sure that it's going to be perfect, I'm not disappointed, and may actually make you deal harder with it, and you may end up taking ownership of things that were not even within your control. You are not in control of the behavior of other people. You are not existing as an island. In everything that you'd be doing, you are codependent on someone else playing their part for you to achieve something. So if they don't play their part, you are going to own their behavior and want to carry it. So a perfectionist mentality really is harming. I wouldn't really advise anyone to have it, because the world in itself is not perfect. The circumstances themselves are not perfect, but it doesn't mean we cannot pass and achieve even under those imperfect circumstances. But we need to allow ourselves to understand that, you know what, I may want to, for example, like now, for people that are perfectionists, the fact that they couldn't do certain things because of COVID, they are struggling to accept. They are owning. They are owning. Without, their mind is not open to the fact that they are not responsible for what happened. But because they've got that mentality, they are owning it. They are beating themselves up. So it's not on. It's not on. We cannot expect perfection from ourselves. While circumstances are changing, we as ourselves, as human beings, are imperfect, and we are dependent on other people as well to play their role for us to get to where we want to be. And we have to meet people that are also imperfect as well. So no, it's not working. It's not on.
Sure. Wow. That is really powerful, also, Nthabiseng. And you know, I'm just as you actually talking, I'm looking at my own life, and I'm like, there was a point where Wandile once considered himself to be a perfectionist. And I remember, I think I was age 19 or so. I had a conversation with my GP. I don't know what we were actually talking about that day, but it actually came out that I said that I am a perfectionist. I think I was having a bit of stress. And he was like, what does that mean? There's no such a thing as a perfect human being. I just still believe that, you know, because I want things to be done a certain way and they need to be done perfectly. I considered myself as such. Now getting to learn that, you know, there's really no such. It's like you're setting yourself up for failure by calling yourself a perfectionist. Because honestly, life happens. And now I guess that a lot of those people that consider themselves, you know, as perfectionists, they actually struggled with either depression or something that's even worse, especially with the pandemic now. Now, in this whole conundrum of expectations, you know, we either get what we expect or we reap disappointments. But yet many of us believe in things that are, you know, guaranteed to let us down. What propels people to hold on to false hope?
It's really the inability to accept the reality. it's very dangerous to hold on to the ideal. It's not wrong to have an ideal world. I mean, we all have a dreams of how we would like or how we would want things to be. But we can't end there. We need to come back to our reality. So we hold on to false hope because this false hope is feeding to the ideal and forcing us to dismiss the reality that we are living in. So beyond the ideal, it's important for one to come back to their reality and ask yourself, what is my reality? What is the reality that I'm dealing with? What are my capabilities? What are my resources? What are my abilities? What are my opportunities? What is available, regardless of what I would like to achieve in the end, or where I see myself, or where I want to be eventually? I need to come back to the reality and say, what is my reality at this moment? So holding on to false hope is a sign of denialism because you don't want to accept things as they are. You would rather hold on to this false belief or false thing because you are denying the reality. And also we hold on to false hope because acknowledging the truth may mean giving up on who we thought of ourselves to be. I'll give an example with holding on to a marriage. When I do not have an identity out of this marriage. So even if this marriage may end, the fact that I don't have an identity outside of this marriage has become a part of me. This job has become a part of my identity. I don't see me without this job. I cannot imagine me without this marriage. I'm going to hold on to the false hope that I have because holding on to this false hope gives me meaning, gives me an identity. So if I have to let it go, what's left for me? What then for me? Who am I? So letting go may mean threatening the self-concept that I have, may mean threatening the self that I know myself to be. So I'm not ready to deal with that. I'm not ready to face that. So to keep me sane, I will hold on to this false hope, come hell or high. I know nothing out of this. Yes, it's false, but I know nothing out of it. So I will hold on to it. So it's such things that keeps us holding on to things that we actually should be letting go of, because we cannot imagine life without the very same thing that we are holding on to. That is not even there, and we are so much in denial that we see it as being there, even if we know deep down that it's not there. But we're going to create that false hope because really, I'm scared. I mean, who am I without my job? I see what my job is doing, but who am I without my job? I see what my marriage is doing to me, but who am I without my job? So I'd rather hold on to this false hope than to venture into this new space that I know nothing about.
Now, Sis Nthabi, speaking of false hope, some people, when they are faced with failed expectations, they tend to attribute negative life events with personal failings. And sometimes this leads to an obsessive or an obsessional self-blame. And now, in this circumstance or in this situation, how does one avoid inward anger?
It's being honest. But unfortunately, I like that you mentioned that it may have to do with previous experiences. When one goes through a lot of disappointments at times, it's easier for one to get to a point where they internalize it and you start thinking, probably I'm the problem. But it also takes us back to what I've said. Knowing yourself, knowing who you are, having that identity and knowing where your powers are and where you start and where you end. It's true that sometimes one may go through more than one hurtful experience, and really we cannot explain it. It's unexplainable. I've had to sit with people that have been hijacked 3-4 times, but you cannot internalize that and blame yourself. Know things that you have control over and know things that you have no control over. And in life, we don't always have the answers. The thing is, we want to have answers to everything. And unfortunately, we don't have answers to everything. We've had parents that have lost 4 or 5 kids. We don't have an explanation for that. We don't. But it doesn't mean you have to internalize that and say, this is happening to me because I am, and you take the blame and you carry it on yourself. Let's accept that in certain instances in life, we don't always have the answers. We are not always responsible. And no matter how careful we may be, there is always that 1% risk of life going haywire. And it's got nothing to do with you. It's nothing personal. It's just how life rolls. And if you should be experiencing disappointments and unmet expectations more than once, never make the mistake of internalizing it and being angry at yourself, but be true to the circumstances that are unique to each event, because there are unique circumstances to each event, and learn whatever that you need to learn from it, change what you can, and move on without really taking the blame on things that you've got no control over.
Wow. I guess the power is really in knowing what you have control and what you don't have control over. But there was once a wise person who actually once said, life is what happens when we are busy planning. And it hit me. Now, my next question speaks to, how does one actually prevent an unmet expectation, or rather, how does one prevent unmet expectations from creating feelings of vindictiveness and bitterness?
And unfortunately, sometimes we may not prevent that, okay? Because, like I said, when your expectations are not met, you are hurt. You may be hurt. You will be hurt as a person, but move past it. Don't let the hurt be the end of it. The fact that you are hurt shouldn't be a full stop. Let it be a comma. And work through your hurt, work through your pain. Sometimes we are hurt because our boundaries were crossed, right? Sometimes we are hurt because we failed to set boundaries. So reflect, learn, take the lesson out of it. What is it that you can learn from that experience? Learn your lesson from it, improve going forward. But we can't say, you will never be hurt, or if you hurt, there's something wrong. We are human. When things don't go our way, there's a bit of pain here and there. And allowing ourselves to go through the pain and work through the pain is the best thing for us to work and get over the pain, because we cannot deny it. We can't say we are going to be people that are going to be perfect. When we hurt, and we work through our hurt. That is when hurt does not turn to bitterness, because it's when you let your hurt become, you don't deal with your hurt, that it creates bitterness and anger and whatnot. But acknowledging that I've been disappointed, my expectations were not met, there's nothing wrong. Cry if you must, roll on the soil if you must, do anything, as long as you are not going to hurt yourself, you are not going to hurt the next person, you are not going to hurt animals or break things, but find a way to let it out, let that pain out and deal with it and move to the next chapter. Don't build on that one. move.
Now, Sister Nthabi, I believe we deal with emotional losses on a daily basis. Now, how does one forgive a person who inflicted a pain, a person who's not remorseful for what they did? How do you forgive a person who has never apologized to you? How do you forgive an apology that you never received? And most importantly, how do you grieve for a living person?
Yeah, issues of forgiveness and pain, I have come to learn differently about it. Say you are knocked down by a car. Sometimes there's no time for us to discuss where was I standing, you were wrong, you were right, what the major problem at the time is that I'm hurt and I need medical attention. Sometimes we force ourselves to talk forgiveness while we haven't healed. So it's okay to park the issue of forgiveness, because sometimes you find that the real reason you are not forgiving is because you haven't healed. How do you forgive when you haven't healed? So the preaching that to heal you must forgive, I am very skeptical about it. So I say heal. If you've been emotionally hurt, focus on your pain, focus on your healing. Because once you have healed, you are probably in a much better position to entertain forgiveness. So sometimes we are put in a corner where we are forced to say, forgive. How do I even forgive when I'm still bleeding? How do I even think of forgiveness when the pain is still there, it's still raw? You know, when I am also being made to feel like now I'm the one that is inhuman because I'm the one that's failing to give this person my forgiveness. Does anybody care to think about what I'm going through? Does anybody care to think about what I'm feeling? So I say, focus on your healing. Prioritize yourself. Don't prioritize the person that has hurt you. Don't prioritize forgiving the person that has hurt you. Prioritize yourself. Once you have healed, then you can make a decision. Can I forgive? Because forgiveness, one thing that we forget, saying I forgive you, it's an incident. But you need to forgive the person continuously, because you are not going to forget what they've done to you. And each time that thing crosses your mind, you need to be able to remember that I have forgiven. So the other thing, we tend to think that once I say I forgive you, then I'm automatically healed myself as well. No, I may forgive you, but the wound may still be fresh. So even if I forgive you now, it's okay for me to forgive you, but keep your distance. So forgiveness, you give in your terms. I need to stress this. You give forgiveness in your terms. And when you are hurt, you prioritize your healing. You don't prioritize the person that has hurt you. It's not important that you forgive, but it's important that you heal, so that when you are ready to forgive, it's going to be from a true healed place. And you would have touched from the incident and have completely healed from it. So we can't be really expecting people to forgive when they're still bleeding and be saying your forgiveness, your healing is attached. Yeah, forgive them so you can heal. That is what also hurts people more. Why should I prioritize this person that hurt me? What about me? So I say to you, for your emotional pain, prioritize your healing, my darling. Let your healing be the only thing that you focus on. Then when you are ready, you'll entertain forgiveness. Forgiving is not a priority when you're bleeding. Stopping the bleeding is. Because we don't want you to die from the bleeding.
Hmm.
Also, Nthabiseng, you've just raised some, interesting points, that are valid. But there's this question that is coming up to my head. I'm not sure if it depends with the type of relationship that you find yourself having to forgive in or what. But now, how does one deal with the external pressure that comes from people around you, especially in a parent-child relationship? This pressure where your parent has wronged you, and now you have all these voices saying forgive, and you haven't healed. How does a child deal with that pressure of these voices saying they must forgive because this is your parent?
I said, if you should ever be faced with a situation where you have to choose between yourself and someone else, may God help you that you choose yourself. It's a very difficult position to be in. And I must say, it's easy to say choose you, but I understand that it's not easy. It's not going to be an easy one. But I hope easy doesn't mean impossible. And I hope that decision not being easy doesn't mean you exposing yourself to further pain and hurt. Because if you don't protect yourself, if you don't stand up for yourself, if you don't put yourself first, who's going to do that for you? If Nthabiseng cannot fight for Nthabiseng, if Nthabiseng cannot say, you know what, I hear what you are saying, but it doesn't look like there's anyone that understands what Nthabiseng is going through right now. It doesn't look like there's anyone that is prepared to meet Nthabiseng halfway at any point. Then it means Nthabiseng has got to protect Nthabiseng. In some instances in life, unfortunately, it is you that has got to protect you from the masses. And may God give you the strength to do that. Protect yourself. When everyone else is against you, may you not join them or choose to please them at your expense. Because like I said, they are going to be happy. They are going to praise you. But what will be happening to you when you go to sleep at night? Will you be content? Will you be truly happy? Will you be smiling from the bottom of your heart? For how long are you going to be able to put on that mask to please everyone? Rather, let's hate you and you are the original that you are, than for us to love you with a mask that you have put on. Because one day you're going to remove the mask. And who's going to be after the mask?
Sure.
We don't want you to put on a mask to a point where removing it is going to hurt. To a point where removing it is going to mean it coming off with parts of you, because it has become so attached to your skin that when you have to remove this mask, it's going to leave you with scars and you will never be the same again. Self-betrayal is very expensive, regardless of who that you are faced with. May you put yourself first. It doesn't matter who they are. You are the one that needs to protect you before everyone else.
That is power right there.
Wow. Absolutely. That's powerful. Now, also, Nthabi, I said before that we face challenges daily, and some are more excruciating than others, and challenges always have a ripple effect. Now, when challenges occur, how does one and their loved ones find meaning in the circumstances? Do we always learn from the experiences that we encounter? Are there lessons to be attained from every painful experience?
It depends on like what's a lesson to learn from rape? What must one learn from rape? You know,
Sure.
You know, so it really depends. But having said that, we should always know that whatever happens to us, we need not to give away our power to choose and overcome, because there is no circumstance that comes to us and take that away from us. So even if there's no lesson to be learned at that time, or if you don't see it, don't look for the lesson. It's fine. If you don't see it, it's fine. We can't always look for the lesson to learn, like the example that I've made. What's there to learn from rape, really? You know, but what you can do for yourself, know that even if you have been through that painful experience, there is one thing that you still have: the power to choose your response over it. The power to choose how you move on after the experience. That is where our power is. We may not have the power over what have happened. We may not see the lesson. We may not understand it. And it's fine. Some people, after 5 years, they will come back and say, this was the lesson. It's okay. If in your situation there's no lesson to learn, it is still okay. But never give away your power to choose how you are going to respond once everything has happened, once it all has been said and done. Because that is one thing that you will always have with you. And the incident or the experience, no matter whether it is with or without a lesson, it will never take that away from you. You will have that with you all the time. Get up.
Wow. What a bliss. Nthabiseng, I'm having an amazing time, honestly. This is empowering. It's empowering, also,
It
Nthabiseng.
is
Now,
indeed.
whilst we're talking about challenges, the pandemic has meant upheaval in many areas of life, creating feelings of sadness and disappointment to many. How do we find healthy coping strategies to deal with disappointment?
Yeah, we have come to learn that we should be strong. I would like to redefine strong today. The strongest people are the ones that allow themselves to feel the most uncomfortable emotions. I'm not going to say negative, because there's no negative emotion. Each emotion is there and is a response to a situation. It's just that we have become comfortable with certain emotions and we have become uncomfortable with certain emotions. So sometimes we need to learn to find comfort in our discomfort. When you are in an uncomfortable space, try to sit comfortably in that discomfort. When life is happening and uyahlabeka, uyezwa ukuthi, you know what, uyahlabeka la. Try to find some uhlabeke comfortably.
Yes.
Because it's your time. It's what is happening. It's where you are at. While you allow yourself to plan your next move. Like I said, the need to know it all, always, is killing us. The positive mentality. Sometimes you don't have to be positive. You just need to acknowledge that, get better. I'm not okay. It's not right. I'm not happy. I'm hurt. I'm sinking. You just need to acknowledge that and own it. Don't be ashamed of the fact that you find yourself in an uncomfortable space. Don't be ashamed of the fact that you find yourself going through uncomfortable emotions. Own that. Let it be your reality. Own it, but do something about it. That's when we are empowered to do something. Because then the minute you acknowledge the existence of something, it's then when you start doing something about it. So we cope by being realistic. We cope by being authentic to what we are going through, by being authentic to what we are experiencing. The pictures, the happy faces that we post on Facebook, on Instagram, and all that, they don't mean anything. Who are you when you shut the door? That person, when you begin to be true to yourself, you find that that is when you also learn to navigate your reality, because then you find your true path and you are going to follow it. You are not going to force yourself to forge a certain way. Like, for example, if I acknowledge that I've lost my job and I'm not coping and this is hitting me hard, I'm not going to force myself to paint a false picture, but I'm going to force myself to acknowledge this reality. And when I open the door, I'm going to look for help. I'm not going to put a mask of the false positivity, but I'm going to open the door and look for help. So if we can really allow ourselves to acknowledge where we are, not dismissing where we would like to be, we can actually find ways to cope where we are right at that time. Because then you're going to find that, okay, maybe, yes, the way I'm feeling a corner, I go correct. Let me try this, and by that you have found your coping mechanism. So what I'm trying to say is that you, wherever you are, allow yourself to look for what can work for you where you are without forcing yourself to deny your reality. If it's help that you need to get help. If the power is in you at that time, trust yourself to do what is right, to see yourself through that painful experience. If it's your hands that will help you at that time, trust your hands, believe in your hands to get you through that time. So authenticity goes a very long way. It can be our coping mechanism. We look for coping mechanisms, yet our denial makes us not even see the answers when they are right here on our faces.
We live in a society whereby we embrace success, or we embrace strength more than weaknesses. And we find ourselves in situations whereby we are told that when certain ordeals occur, we are told that stay calm and carry on, move on, life goes on. Now, these are common phrases in today's society. Now, what are some of the dangers of ignoring feelings of disappointment?
I'm going to ask you, where is strength in lying to yourself? Because the notion of being strong, we are teaching people that being strong is dismissing your feelings. So we are actually saying, run away from you. Where is strength there? The weakest people are actually the ones that are running away from themselves. So if you don't want to deal with your weaknesses, it then means you're going to run away from yourself forever. If you don't want to face your disappointments, it means you're going to run away from you forever. Hence, we see people hop from relationship to relationship because you can't stand being by yourself. Because being by yourself means acknowledging your true feelings, and you can't. You are too weak to do that. So there's nothing strong about being false. There's nothing strong about not being able to feel your feelings and be true to them. That is why we also find people drinking. Good. There are people, you'll never find that person alone by themselves.
True.
They will always have a phone calling out a friend. If it's not a friend, they'd rather go to the mall. If it's not at the mall, they'd rather go drinking. But as long as they are not by themselves.
They're not alone. Yes.
Would you say that person is strong? No.
No.
The strongest people are the ones that face pain head on and say, I will face this pain and I will deal with it and I will work through it. Now that is strength. So let's acknowledge our pain. That is strength. The weak people, weakness is going to force you to keep running. You will always be you will always be in debts. You will always be with wrong friends. You will always be compromising yourself. There's no strength there. That is weakness. But imagine what it takes to sit in a dark space. Imagine what it takes to allow yourself to feel pain, to allow yourself to feel this deep pain that you don't know what you're going to do with it, but say to yourself, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to allow myself to feel it. To me, that is strength. It's not weakness. But weakness is saying, I'm not going to do this now. That is weakness. You are running away. That is how I define the two. So if we should redefine strength and turn things around and say, it's only the strongest people that allow themselves to sit through the pain, because it takes strength, really. It really does take strength to allow yourself to sit through your pain and face it and work through it instead of running away from it. And one thing that we don't know about unresolved emotional issues, you can only run away to a certain extent. Pain will keep coming and saying, I'm here. And you're going to push it away and run. Then it's going to come and say, I'm here. You're going to push it away and run. It's going to stop coming to the front. It's going to pull you when you don't want to attend to it. Eventually, your unmet or your unresolved emotional issues are going to pull you now. And imagine being pulled. How hard is the fall? Just imagine you going forward and then suddenly something pulls you. The fall is just too deep. Can you even get up at times? Sometimes we fall too hard. It's not even easy to get up. So don't wait for your pain to deal with you. Don't wait for your pain to deal with you. Deal with it. It's easier that way.
Wow, this is so amazing, awesome, Nthabi. Now, we often tend to complicate things even further with self-blame rather than to reset our expectations. How can we avoid those feelings of disappointment?
Without blaming ourselves.
Yes.
Well, sometimes false blame, I usually say, ask yourself, is there really something that you are guilty of? Honestly, be honest. Don't force matters. Don't force the guilt where there's none. Like we always say, forgive yourself, forgive yourself. Sometimes, what's there to forgive? Let's be honest. What's there to forgive? What did I do wrong that requires forgiveness? So blaming ourselves falsely requires us to actually take a step back and reflect without taking things at the surface and accepting because sometimes, these beautiful quotes, we run with them without actually taking the time to digest and understand how applicable are they to us. Hence, sometimes we end up carrying blame. We end up thinking we must forgive ourselves. reflect, forgive yourself. All right, they're preaching forgive yourself. What's there to forgive? What did I do wrong? And if honestly you find that you are to be blamed for something, then forgive yourself. And if you cannot find fault in yourself, why continue to blame yourself? So the reason we carry the false blame is because we don't want to acknowledge that certain things really, we are not responsible for them. We take responsibility for things that we are not even responsible for. I will take an example. As a parent, you send your child to go buy bread, right? And then when your child goes to buy bread, they are knocked down by a car. And you say, I shouldn't have sent them. How would you have known?
True.
There's no way.
How would you have known? You know, so we will continue to carry false blame if we are not going to interrogate it. If we are not prepared to interrogate it, how would you have known that by sending your child to the shop, they're going to be hit by a car? You would not have known. And really, if you believe that you would not have known, let go of the blame. The blame is false. The guilt is false. You are sitting at home and you suddenly decide, let me go visit Wandile. And then you go visit Wandile. While you're sitting there, you like, Wandile, I'll leave at 4. But for some reason you decide, I'll leave at 6. Then you leave at 6, then you have an accident. Then you blame yourself. I should have left at 4. How would you have known? So a lot of the time, if we are to interrogate this blame that we carry and the guilt that we carry, we will really realize that it's false. So to deal with it and to resolve it, we can't do it without fully interrogating it. Be factual. Let's not be emotional. Sometimes we want to be emotional in issues that emotions are not even needed. Yes, your child was knocked by a car, it hurts, but let's be factual. Let's put your emotions aside, because yes, you are going to be hurt, you are going to have emotions, but let's be factual. The fact is, would you have known that by sending your child to the shop, they will be knocked by a car? You would not. Would you have known that by staying 2 more hours, you will meet an accident? No. You know, so let's interrogate that and really be true and peel the layers until we come to a point where we agree. Is there something to blame you for? And if there's none, let it go and free yourself.
Wow. Sure. Sister Nthabi, my last question to you. In the beginning of each year, usually we set out New Year's resolutions and set out timeframes for achieving particular goals that we want to attain. Now, this COVID-19 has created a whole lot of uncertainty, and some of our minds have been programmed to be fearful of what the future holds. What would you say to a person who's not expectant of a brighter future, but who is living for the now?
Yeah, we actually plan for the future. It's okay to plan for the future, but it's always safe to come back to the now and really live for the now. You know, let's plan, right? It's okay to plan, but let's not live in the destination. Like, for example, we can't get into a car and not decide where we are going, right?
True.
It's pointless. We are going to get into a car and decide that, Nthabi, let's go to Durban. And how are we going to get to Durban? This is the route that we are going to take. Fine, having decided on the route that we are going to take, when life happens, it's okay to change. You know, we can't say, there is a N3. So even if N3 equates, then let's explore alternatives. Our destination is Durban. this route is closed. It doesn't mean it was the only route to Durban. Let's be flexible. So there's nothing wrong with having plans and goals, but as you attain your plans, as you work towards your goals, as you work towards achieving them, be in the now. What's happening now? Because it's the now that will take you to the end. You understand? Yes, I want to pass at the end of the year, but right now I must write my homework. You understand?
Do my assignment.
Do my assignment. Yes, I want to be a doctor, but right now I'm in first year. I'm not gonna get to the 7th year unless I get through to the first year. So let's find a balance to both. As much as we have future aspirations, the now is also important, because it is through what is happening now that we can continue to navigate our way to the future. And we don't change the goal, but we change the plans, because life happens, things happen. So we adjust, we become flexible. So Rito fitla Durban in Nthabi, but because N3 is a sebetsa, and sometimes you're gonna take longer, you know. We're gonna take longer than we had planned. You know, maybe N3 network is like 3 hours. Unfortunately, we have to take this alternative route. Network is 6 hours, double the time. But the fact is, we have not changed the destination. We have just changed the route. So let's approach it that way. We are not changing the goals. We are just changing the plans because things are happening. So we need to adjust. We can't stay stagnant. We need to respond to the now. The now is important because it is the now that will determine if we get to the future.
Wow, Nthabiseng, this has been over an hour of bliss. Honestly, this has been life-changing. I don't know about you, Nthabiseng, but this has actually felt like therapy, but I can't actually put a price on it. It's been nuggets of wisdom after nuggets of wisdom. And I do believe that our viewers at home have been empowered by today's session. And I'm really looking forward to our second session with Nthabiseng Lebina. Nthabiseng, for those that want to reach you, are you available socially? Can they reach out to you?
Yes, I'm available on Facebook. I know I've got Twitter account, I've got Instagram account, but please forgive me. I can't use those social networks. I am most active on Facebook. My Facebook page is Nthabiseng Lebina, and I can also be reached on my cell because I'm running a private practice, of course, and my number is 082 323 5888. You can send me a WhatsApp. You can give me a call anytime between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday. If I'm not able to take your call, of course, it's because of the nature of my work, but please send me a text, a WhatsApp text. I will surely respond to your WhatsApp text that is sent to me within the working hours. This is to make sure that I also protect myself so that I'm able to take time out to recharge and
important.
the best of me the following day.
All right, and just a quick one, Nthabiseng, do you offer online sessions? You know, with COVID,
yes.
A lot of people are now more comfortable to do online sessions, you know,
yes.
rather than physical.
Yes, I do provide online sessions. I'm using Zoom, but if there's any platform that you are comfortable with, I know there's Teams, there's Duo. Please, I'm technologically challenged. I'm open to learning. If you've got an alternative to Zoom, teach me. We will use that online platform and I will be able to provide you with online therapy. But let me say this, I do not do online therapy with children because of the assessments that one would need to, and the complication that comes with working with children. But for adults, online therapy I do provide, and I am familiar with Zoom, But if you are familiar with other forms of network, teach me, please. I'm open to learning. I will use what is most convenient for you, for me to be able to assist you, because your mental health is my priority.
No, thank you so much, Nthabiseng.
Nthabi.
From my end, it's been an honor. Over to you, Nthabi.
Nthabi, thank you so much. We've learned indeed a lot from your well of wisdom. Like, we've drank prodigious quantities. Like, honestly, I wish we could go on the whole night. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It has indeed been an honor, and we're looking forward to having you again. We're looking forward to part 2. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for having me. And I am looking forward to a fruitful relationship where we will continue to empower, inform, and educate our people. We can never stop. Thank you very much. It was an honor for me to be with you this evening. Thank you.
And to all our viewers at home, if this has been value, please do not forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can keep having more and more of these conversations. That's it for tonight. Thank you.